Hi, Pastor Nathan Decker with your hashtag Better Together devotion for today. And this week I've been talking about rethinking. In other words, changing the way we think so that we think more like Jesus. Jesus had a way of doing integrative thinking. Integrative thinking is the ability to have two opposing thoughts simultaneously and somehow through that to come up with stories or understandings that just open and offer light and offer the ability for us to think about things in a new way. You know, it's having these polar opposites and being able to hold them together in the tension itself is where we learn. Jesus would do this often. When somebody brought him a coin, he asked them to bring him a coin. When somebody said, by what authority do you do these things? Should you pay taxes? Should you do this? Should you do that? And Jesus said, hey, you can hold these things in tension. Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Give unto God what is God's. And it's within that tension that we live still to this day. Within the way that Jesus did things, Jesus had stories that would have very ruthless characters in them. And through those ruthless characters, Jesus would teach us about how we should be. Think about the parables that Jesus taught. One of them is called the parable of the unjust judge, where a widow goes and persistently, brings her appeal to the judge over and over and over again, knowing that he's unjust, knowing that he doesn't fear God, knowing he could care less about morality. Or the other one, the shrewd manager. A story about a manager who finds out he's going to be fired, and to make sure that he has enough money to provide, he goes around forgiving debts and collecting what he can so that he can get by. What a strange story, Jesus. Or the widow's offering that Jesus points out of 2 small coins, where he says, she's given more than anybody else. Out of her poverty, she's given richly. Through these oxymoronic and hyperbole and through these integrated thinkings, Jesus teaches us how we can be better disciples, better human beings. Jesus shows us a way. And by far the most wonderful, crazy thought that Jesus taught was that he was going to die, and that through his death, all would receive life. All would receive salvation. That he would die, and by dying, death would be conquered. Do you hear how strange and polar opposites those are? That through death, resurrection comes, that through this end of life, rebirth happens? We would do good to think more like Jesus, to instead of trying to lean one direction or the other direction, to hold things in tension, and to allow the tension to teach us more about who we are and about where we could be as humanity and as disciples. It's in the integrative teachings and integrative thinkings that we can find new ways of being and new pathways of just beyond what we would ever imagine beforehand. We could be better together.